He left me sitting in a rundown diner for 3 hours on our anniversary. When he finally strolled in, he was practically bellowing with laughter, his friends right behind him. "See? I told you she'd still be here." The sound of their snickering felt like a hot brand on my skin. I just smiled, paid my bill, and walked out. My real plan was already quietly ticking into motion. 3 hours and 22 minutes. My husband, Rob, barged through the door, his voice echoing off the cheap paneling. His 3 best friends trailed behind him like a pack of hyenas. Every head in the place swiveled. He was brandishing his phone, shoving it in the face of an elderly couple, sitting in the booth next to mine. Look at that. 3 hours and 22 minutes my wife sat right here. I told my boys she'd wait all night if I said so. Kevin was filming. Leo was pocketing a wad of cash from Mark, and Mark was laughing so hard he was bent over, clutching his stomach. My husband slid into the vinyl seat across from me, his face glowing with triumph. "So, honey, what was so important you wanted to talk about on our anniversary?" The older woman in the next booth let out a sharp gasp, her hand flying to her throat. Her husband looked like he was about to stand up and say something, but she gently pulled him back down. Maria, the server who had been dutifully refilling my coffee for 3 solid hours, dropped her notepad. The sharp clatter of plastic on worn linoleum was the only sound in the now silent diner. I looked at my husband's face. I really looked at it. That smug look of satisfaction wasn't new. I'd seen it on him every Tuesday night when he hosted his poker game. I'd seen it every time he won one of the little psychological games he played, with my dignity as the grand prize. But seeing it here, in this very diner where we'd had our first date 12 years ago, while his friends documented my humiliation for sport, something deep inside me finally gave way. It didn't shatter. It fractured, like a tectonic plate that had been grinding under immense pressure for 12 years. "It was nothing important," I said, my voice surprisingly steady as I pulled $40 from my purse and placed it on the table for Maria. "Just trying to remember when you turned into this man. Before we get any deeper into this, I just want to say thank you for being here and listening to these stories about reclaiming your power. If you believe everyone deserves to be treated with respect and kindness in their relationships, I'd be so grateful if you'd hit that subscribe button. It's completely free, and it really helps us get these messages out to more people who might need to hear them." Okay, let's get back to how her story unfolded, but I knew exactly when. The change in him had been so slow, so insidious, I had barely noticed it happening. It was like gaining a pound a year until one day you see a photo of yourself and you don't recognize the person staring back. It started in the 2nd month of our marriage. I was 27, he was 29, and we were playing house in our tiny first apartment in Chicago. I'd gotten home late from my job at a graphic design agency. A major client had a last-minute crisis, and the phones had been ringing off the hook until well past 7. Dinner wasn't on the table. It seems so trivial now, but he sat me down on our secondhand sofa like I was a child who'd gotten a bad report card. He explained how his own mother always had a hot meal ready by 6 p.m. sharp. He said it was a matter of respecting the home, of respecting him. I actually apologized. I promised I would manage my time better. The very next week, I bought a crock pot. I thought I had solved the problem, but there was always another problem, another tiny way I failed to live up to the impossible standards set by his sainted mother, another small adjustment he needed me to make. My laugh was a little too loud at his corporate holiday parties. My opinions on politics were a bit too firm when his buddies came over to watch the game. My career was becoming a little too ambitious, especially when it might conflict with his own social calendar. "Remember when she tried to have that girls' night out?" Leo was saying now, squeezing into the booth next to Rob. "What was that, like 4 years ago? Had to nip that in the bud real quick." They all cackled, and the memory flooded back, sharp and bitter. My college roommate, Chloe, had been in town from Denver. I had planned a simple dinner and a few drinks, a chance to reconnect with the one person who knew me before I had learned how to shrink myself to fit into smaller and smaller spaces. 2 hours into our meal, he had called in a panic. His regional manager was in town unexpectedly, and he needed me at a client dinner at Gibson's Steakhouse. Right away, I had left Chloe at the table with a flurry of apologies and a $100 bill. Of course, there was no client dinner. He was at home on the couch playing Call of Duty with Leo, delivering a silent lesson. My plans were always temporary, always subject to his veto. The best one was the promotion, Mark added, still filming me with his phone even though I was staring daggers at him, when she actually thought she was going to take that director role. The promotion. I had bled for it, working 60-hour weeks, earning glowing recommendations from 3 separate department heads. The new salary would have put me well above his. The night before I was set to formally accept the offer, he sat me down for one of his talks. How would it impact our future plans for a family? How would the long hours put a strain on our marriage? How his own career was at a critical juncture and he really needed my unwavering support. I turned down the promotion the next morning. I watched them give it to a guy named Ben who had half my experience but the right set of chromosomes. She made the smart choice, my husband said now, reaching across the table to pat my hand in a way that was meant to look affectionate but felt deeply condescending. Some women just aren't wired for that level of pressure. Mark laughed, pulling something up on his phone. Show her the index. The index. Of course, there was an index. My husband looked genuinely proud as Mark angled the phone screen toward me. It was a spreadsheet with columns and rows, all color-coded and meticulously formatted. Marital Performance Index, the header read. My name was at the top. The first row, dinner punctuality, 96%. Obedience score, 9.4 out of 10. Public demeanor, perfect. Longest wait, record 3 hours, 22 minutes. Below my name were the other wives, Helen, Mark's wife. Dinner punctuality, 71%. Obedience score, 7.6 out of 10. There were notes in a red font. Requires frequent recalibration. Leo's ex-wife had a line struck through her name. The note beside it read, system failure. It's not misogynistic, Kevin explained, as if I'd asked. It's just data. We're tracking what works in a successful partnership. Successful partnerships. I scanned the metrics they had chosen. There was nothing about love or trust or mutual respect or shared dreams. There was nothing about the 12 years I had spent slowly erasing myself, one small correction at a time, one edit at a time, until I was less of a person and more of a performance. You want to know what the real secret is? My husband asked the table, though his voice was loud enough for the entire diner to hear. Consistency. Same standards, same consequences, same rewards. It's like training any intelligent animal. Animal. The word just hung there in the stale, greasy air as Maria approached with the coffee pot, her hand trembling slightly. She looked at me with an expression of such deep sorrow that I had to look away. "More coffee, hun?" she asked in a near whisper. "She's finished," my husband answered for me. "We're heading out. Right, honey?" This was the part of the script where I was supposed to get up, follow him out the door, drive home in silence, and pretend that this was all a normal, acceptable part of a loving marriage. Tomorrow, I would make his eggs over easy, press his shirts, and smile sweetly when his mother called to tell me what a fortunate woman I was to have such a driven, successful husband. "Actually," I said, "I think I will have one more cup." The table fell silent. My husband's smile tightened at the edges. "I said, we're leaving. I heard you." I pushed my empty cup toward Maria, who looked back and forth between us like she was watching a bomb squad at work. But I'm not quite done. Kevin's phone was still recording. Good. Let them get this part on camera, too. "You trained me," I said, my tone conversational, as if we were discussing the weather. "That's what you've been telling everyone for years, isn't it? That you trained me like a prize-winning dog. Sit, stay, wait, fetch." And I did it. I performed every single trick. I met every single metric on your little index. "You're being hysterical," he said. But his audience was now the entire diner, and they were all leaning in. "Emma, why don't you tell them about Tuesday nights? How you snap your fingers to time how quickly I can bring you a beer from the fridge. 13 seconds is my personal best, right? You were so proud when you told your brother at Thanksgiving." Mark shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Maybe we should just go." "Or," I continued, ignoring him, "we could talk about the head patting. Good girl, you say, and you literally pat the top of my head. Like I'm a golden retriever who successfully brought back the morning paper." The elderly woman in the next booth now had her phone out, discreetly filming from her lap. Her husband gave me a small, almost imperceptible nod of encouragement. "That's enough," my husband said, his triumphant mood curdling into something sour and ugly. "Is it? Because I haven't even gotten to the best parts. Like how you convinced me to turn down the director position because your fragile ego couldn't handle me earning more than you. Or how you told your own mother I was too emotional to handle our finances, so you manage every single dollar we have. Or how every single thing I do is apparently part of this grand training program that you discuss with your friends, like I'm some kind of case study in behavioral science." Maria poured my coffee, and then, in an act of beautiful, silent solidarity, she asked, "Would you care to see a dessert menu? We have a very nice anniversary special. It's on the house." My husband shot up from his seat, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "We are leaving now." But I didn't flinch. For the first time in 12 years, I didn't jump to obey his command. No. The word hung in the air, a clear, ringing challenge. Kevin's phone was still recording, but his hand had dropped slightly. The framing forgotten Leo had stopped counting his money. Mark was staring intently at his scuffed shoes. I said, "I know what you said. It's the same thing you've been saying for 12 years. You say jump, and I ask how high. You say fetch, and I run. You say wait, and I sit here for 3 hours while you and your friends have a good laugh about it. But here's the one thing you never managed to train me to do. You didn't train me to stop loving myself completely. There's still a tiny little piece of me left, and it turns out it's enough." I stood up then, not because he had commanded it, but because I was ready. I looked at each of his friends, one by one. "Kevin, your ex-wife didn't leave you because she wanted equality. She left you because you're a pathetic man-child, Mark." Helen cries in her car after she goes to Trader Joe's because it's the only place she can be alone. "And Leo, your wife didn't leave you for another woman. She left you for a human being who actually saw her as one." The diner had become my stage, and I was both the prosecutor and the star witness. My husband's face had cycled from flushed red to stark white to a mottled, blotchy purple I'd never seen before. 12 years, I said, looking directly at him. For 12 years, I have been slowly vanishing, one correction at a time, one joke at a time, one pat on the head at a time. And you documented all of it, you made spreadsheets about it, you turned my dehumanization into a contest with your friends. I picked up my purse, leaving the $40 on the table even as Maria tried to wave it away. "Happy anniversary, my love. I hope you enjoy explaining to everyone why your perfectly trained wife just performed her very last trick." As I walked toward the door, I heard the elderly woman say, loud enough for the whole room to hear, "That poor thing. Sitting here for 3 hours on our anniversary while those vile men were placing bets." The very last thing I heard before the door swung shut behind me was my husband's voice. It wasn't booming anymore. It was small and defensive. "She'll be back. She always comes back." But I wouldn't. The illusion of the perfect wife wasn't just cracked. It had been shattered. The pieces were scattered all over that diner floor, along with his dignity and the uncomfortable silence of his friends. 3 hours and 22 minutes I'd waited. It would be the last time I ever waited for anything from him again. The cold November air felt sharp and clean against my face as I pushed through the diner's heavy glass door, but I didn't go to my car. Not right away. I stood on the sidewalk, just breathing in the night. I let the oxygen fill lungs that had been taking shallow, anxious breaths for hours. Through the large front window, I could see them still sitting there, my husband already flagging down Maria to order food, as if this were just another boys' night out. But let me tell you about the 3 hours before they arrived, those 3 hours that changed the course of my life. I had arrived at 6:40 p.m., a full 20 minutes early, wearing the navy blue dress he'd bought me for our 5th anniversary. Back in the days when he still bought me things that weren't kitchen appliances, the diner was a time capsule. The same cracked red vinyl booths, the same flickering neon sign out front, the same Maria who had served us on our very first date. She'd recognized me instantly, her tired face breaking into a genuine smile. "Anniversary dinner?" she'd asked, and when I nodded, she'd actually clapped her hands together. 12 years. Let me put you in the good booth." The good booth? Tucked away in the corner, more private. It was where he had held my hands across the table and told me about all his dreams. "I'm gonna run a company one day," he had said, "and you're gonna be my queen." We were going to be different from everyone else. He had promised 7 o'clock came and went with the dinner rush. The diner filled with the sounds of families, the smell of meatloaf and fries, the comfortable, noisy chaos of people unwinding together. I ordered his favorite craft beer, the IPA he'd discovered a few months ago and now claimed was the only one worth drinking. I placed the bottle across from me, a hopeful placeholder, 7:15. I made the first call. His phone rang and rang before going to voicemail. "Hey honey, just checking to see if you're on your way. I'm at our booth." My voice was light, breezy, betraying none of the anxiety creeping in. A young couple had been seated in the booth behind me, and I could overhear them debating which appetizer to share with the gravity of world leaders discussing a treaty. They couldn't have been more than 23, still at that stage where every dinner together felt like a special occasion. 7:30. The second call went directly to his voicemail. The battery must be dead, I told myself. He was always forgetting to charge his phone. Maria brought over a basket of breadsticks without me having to ask, the garlic butter on top still warm and melted. "Men," she said, rolling her eyes with a theatrical sigh. They'd be late to their own funeral, but Maria didn't know about the pattern. The business dinners where he would show up an hour late, blaming traffic but smelling faintly of Kevin's brand of cigarettes, the parent-teacher conferences he'd miss entirely, leaving me to stammer excuses to teachers, who eventually just stopped asking where he was. My sister's wedding rehearsal, where he'd strolled in just as dessert was being served, annoyed that I'd sent him so many texts. 8 o'clock. The dinner rush was thinning out. A man sitting alone at the counter kept looking over at me from behind his newspaper. He was maybe in his 70s, wearing a veteran's cap, the kind of man who probably still believed in things like honor and keeping one's word. I wondered what he saw when he looked at me. A woman waiting patiently for her husband, or a woman who had forgotten she had the option not to wait. I sent another text, getting worried. "Please just let me know you're okay." The response came almost instantly. 3 little dots appeared, then vanished. He was typing, then he stopped. The dots appeared again and vanished. He was there, wherever there was, and he was actively choosing not to reply. That's when a different kind of heat started to build in my chest. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was something more primal. Recognition, maybe. Like when you finally see the hidden image in one of those old Magic Eye posters. Once you see it, you can never unsee it. 8:20. Maria refilled my coffee for the 4th time. "You want to order something while you wait, sweetie?" "Just coffee," I said, though my stomach felt like it was eating itself. The breadsticks sat cold and accusing on their plate. The young couple behind me was now sharing a chocolate milkshake, using 2 straws like a scene out of an old black and white movie. The girl giggled at something the boy whispered, and the sound was so pure, so completely untouched by years of disappointment that I had to squeeze my eyes shut. My phone buzzed. Finally. But it was a text from Helen, Mark's wife. "I am so sorry. No context, no explanation, just an apology for something I didn't yet understand. 8:45. I called his office. The night security guard, a kind man named George, answered. Mrs. Anderson? Oh no, your husband left at 5 o'clock sharp. Seemed like he was in a real good mood, too. Said something about going to win a bet. A bet. The word caught in my throat like a shard of glass. George kept chattering about the weather, but I had tuned him out. Through the diner window, I could see the sports bar across the street. The one with all the neon beer signs and the Thursday night wing specials. The one where Kevin's oversized pickup truck was parked right out front. 9 o'clock. 2 hours. The older gentleman at the counter had paid his bill but was still lingering, no longer pretending to read his newspaper. He was just watching me now. Maria had stopped asking if I needed anything. She just hovered nearby like a worried mother hen. The young couple had moved on from milkshakes to splitting a slice of apple pie, taking turns feeding each other bites. I pulled up our text history. I scrolled back through months of messages. Pick up milk. Running late. Where's the car insurance card? When was the last time he'd sent me a text that wasn't a command or a complaint? When was the last time he'd even used my name in a text instead of just starting with, hey, or nothing at all? 9:15. My phone battery was at 12%. I had forgotten to charge it because I'd been too busy getting ready for a man who was sitting across the street, making me the punchline of his latest joke. I could leave. I should leave. But some strange, perverse curiosity kept me pinned to my seat. I wanted to see just how far this would go, how much he truly believed I would endure. Helen texted again. He's showing everyone. The live feed. Mark made me watch. Live feed. They were broadcasting my humiliation for an audience. I looked around the diner, suddenly paranoid. Was everyone watching? But it was just Maria, the old veteran, the young couple who had now moved on to coffee, and a truck driver who had just come in for pie 9:30. The couple behind me was finally leaving. As they passed my booth, the girl paused. I hope everything is okay, she said softly. Her boyfriend tugged on her arm, embarrassed by her forwardness, but she held her ground, her eyes fixed on me. You deserve better than someone who keeps you waiting. Out of the mouths of strangers. Accidental, profound truths. 9:43. The bell on the door chimed, and there they were. I had already seen them coming, watched them jaywalk across the 4-lane road from the sports bar. Kevin was still carrying his beer bottle, even though it was illegal. Their voices were loud before they even got inside, their laughter echoing across the parking lot. My husband's laugh, the one that used to make me feel warm all over, now it just made me feel small. And then he said it, loud enough for God and everyone to hear, 3 hours and 22 minutes. That's a new record. As if my humiliation were a trophy to be mounted on the wall. The rest of it you already know. The confrontation, the spreadsheet, my grand exit that was really my grand entrance into a new life. But those 3 hours, those were mine and mine alone. 3 hours of slowly, painfully understanding that waiting wasn't love, that my patience wasn't a virtue, and that staying wasn't a sign of strength. 3 hours of becoming a woman who would never, ever wait again. My car was idling in our driveway at 6:17 a.m. The exhaust a visible cloud in the frigid morning air. I'd been sitting there for 10 minutes, the engine humming, just studying the house as if it belonged to someone else. The porch light I had left on was still burning. His black BMW was parked at its usual jaunty angle, taking up more than its fair share of the 2-car garage. Everything looked exactly as it had when I'd left for the diner 12 hours ago, but nothing would ever be the same. From inside, I could hear him snoring, that deep, contented snore of a man who believed he had won everything and lost absolutely nothing. The sound drifted out from our bedroom window, the one I always left cracked open because he liked the fresh air while he slept. Even now, after everything, my first conditioned instinct was to worry that he might catch a cold. I killed the engine and sat in the pale dawn light, my phone warm in my lap from hours of scrolling. Helen had sent me 32 screenshots over the course of the night. She'd been documenting everything for 2 years, she said in her messages, just waiting for someone else to finally break. My public humiliation had given her courage, or maybe just company. The first screenshot was from 3 years ago, a message from my husband to their group chat. Day 4 of the silent treatment test. She's cracking, made my favorite dinner, unprompted. Apologized twice for whatever she did wrong, even though she did nothing. This is beautiful. Kevin's response, genius. How long are you gonna hold out? Rob's reply, until she cries. Usually takes 5 days. 5 days. I remembered that week vividly. I'd driven myself half mad trying to figure out what I had done wrong, replaying every conversation, every interaction, searching for the slight. I had finally collapsed in our bedroom, sobbing, begging him to just tell me what was wrong so I could fix it. He had held me then, stroking my hair, telling me I was overthinking things, that he loved me, that sometimes he just needed space to process his own stress. It had all been a game. My anguish had been his entertainment. The next screenshot was even worse. It was a detailed discussion about compliance training, featuring a wife of one of their colleagues named Carol, who'd had the audacity to disagree with her husband at a party. The men had exchanged over 40 messages strategizing how to correct this behavior. Their suggestions ranged from public embarrassment to financial restrictions to something they called an affection withdrawal protocol. I scrolled down to my husband's contribution. The key is inconsistency. Sometimes you reward the behavior you want to discourage. Sometimes you punish the behavior you want to encourage. It keeps them on their toes, constantly guessing, constantly trying to please you. It's basic psychology. Pavlov figured this out with dogs 100 years ago. Dogs. We were just dogs to them. My phone buzzed with a new message from Helen. Look at your Instagram, the photos you're tagged in. I hadn't looked at Instagram in ages. He'd told me that social media was for insecure people who needed constant attention. But there I was, tagged in dozens of photos I had never seen before, pictures from his company parties, where I was always standing slightly behind him, never beside him. Photos from family gatherings where I was always in motion, serving food, clearing plates, fetching drinks, while everyone else sat and relaxed. There was one from last Christmas at his parents' house. I was carving the turkey while he and his father sat at the head of the table discussing their stock portfolios. The caption read, "The best women know their place. Blessed traditional values." It had 67 likes. There were comments from his coworkers calling him a lucky man, and goals. I walked into our house at 6:43 a.m. My footsteps were deliberately heavy on the hardwood floors. He was so ridiculously particular about, let him wake up. Let him see me seeing him for what he truly was. But he didn't stir. The snoring continued, a steady, secure rhythm. His phone was lying face up on his nightstand. No passcode, no security. Why would he need to hide anything from someone so perfectly trained? I picked it up. The battery was at 12%. He'd been so busy celebrating his little victory, he'd forgotten to plug it in. His calendar was meticulously organized. Thursday, 10 a.m. Sterling Industries, CEO interview. He'd blocked out the entire morning and set 3 separate reminder alerts. In the notes section, he'd written, remember, confidence, not arrogance. Mention leadership philosophy. Wear the Armani. I scrolled back through months of his calendar. There were reminders for everything related to his career, his friends, and his hobbies. Our anniversary wasn't on it. My birthday wasn't on it. The only entries that had anything to do with me were things like wife, grocery money, and tell wife about Chicago trip. Tell wife not discuss with wife. Tell wife. His email was a treasure trove of casual cruelty. Exchanges with his brother about how I'd let myself go after I turned 35 discussions with his financial advisor about protecting assets in the event of a marital breakdown. dated 2 years ago, back when I still believed we were happy. An email chain with a headhunter where he had listed his ideal salary requirement as enough so that my wife doesn't need to work. I prefer her to be available for my schedule, available. Like I was a conference room he could book. At 7:15, he finally started to stir. I was sitting at the kitchen table, his phone in front of me, the screenshots I'd found printing out on our home printer, the one he'd bought for his home office but then relegated to the kitchen when he upgraded, "Why are you up?" His voice was thick with sleep and stale alcohol. He stood in the doorway in his boxer shorts, scratching his stomach without a hint of shame. "Couldn't sleep," I said, not looking up from his phone. He finally noticed it in my hands. "What are you doing with my phone?" "Learning." He crossed the room in 3 long strides and snatched it from my grasp. "You do not go through my things, the way you don't go through mine?" I held up my own phone and showed him the tracking app he had installed. The one that shows you everywhere I go, everyone I call, every text I send. His face cycled through a series of expressions. Surprise that I'd found it, annoyance at being challenged, and finally a settling into his default mode of condescension. "That's different. That's for your safety." "My safety?" I stood up, gathering the freshly printed screenshots. "Like the time you used it to show up unannounced at my lunch with Chloe, or when you called me 17 times during my mother's birthday dinner because the tracker showed I'd stopped at a gas station you didn't recognize. You're being dramatic. This is about last night, isn't it? It was just a joke. The guys thought..." I know exactly what the guys thought. I fanned the screenshots out on the table like a hand of damning cards. I have 3 years of what the guys thought. Every little test, every score, every bet. Did you know that Mark live-streamed your grand entrance last night? 47 people watched me sit there and wait in real time. Someone named Brad commented that I was well-trained. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked genuinely thrown off balance. "Helen sent you those. That little what? Woman who finally got tired of being treated like a lab rat in an experiment." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I had once found charming. Now I saw it for what it was, a stalling tactic, buying him time to formulate a new strategy. Look, maybe things got a little out of hand with the guys. It's just how we talk. You know I love you. Do you? Because according to this email you sent to Leo, I'm a solid 7 who thinks she's a 5, which is perfect for management purposes. He actually chuckled, a small, nervous laugh. That's a compliment. I'm saying you're better looking than you give yourself credit for. The fact that he believed this was a valid defense told me everything I needed to know. "I'm done," I said quietly. "Done with what? Don't be ridiculous. Where would you even go? You don't have a job. Your sister lives on the other side of the country. You need me." Need. The word hung there in the air between us like a treaty, waiting to be torn in half. "Actually," I said, pulling up an email on my own phone, "I have an appointment on Tuesday with Veronica Sterling." His face went ashen. Veronica Sterling was the most ruthless divorce attorney in the city, famous for representing the wife of a state senator who had walked away with everything, including his political career. "You can't afford her." "Your mother can." The silence that followed was exquisite. His mother, who had never particularly liked me but who adored the appearance of a perfect family, had already wired me a retainer after I'd forwarded her the screenshots at 6 a.m. Her text response had been brief and to the point. "Take him for everything, then take a little more." But a divorce wasn't enough. Not after what I had learned. Not after finally understanding that I had been a rat in a maze of his design for over a decade. "Your interview on Thursday," I said casually, moving toward the stairs. "Sterling Industries. It's a big opportunity." He grabbed my wrist. Not hard, just firm. The classic control gesture. "What about it?" I looked down at his hand on my wrist, then back up at his face. "Nothing. Just... Cynthia Sterling is known for being thorough. Very, very thorough. She likes to know everything about her potential executives. I pulled my wrist free and walked up the stairs, leaving him standing alone in the kitchen, surrounded by the printed evidence of his own cruelty. Behind me, I could hear him muttering, already on the phone with Kevin, already trying to strategize his way out of this. But I wasn't done. I was just getting started. And Cynthia Sterling was about to become my new best friend. I stood in Veronica Sterling's private bathroom, staring at my reflection in a mirror that probably cost more than my first car. The woman looking back at me was not the same one who had sat waiting in that diner. This woman stood taller, her eyes were sharper, and she was wearing her mother's vintage Chanel suit like it was a suit of armor. 5 minutes, Veronica called through the polished mahogany door. My assistant just confirmed he's in the building. Wednesday afternoon had bled into Wednesday night, our initial planning session extending through a sushi dinner delivered from a restaurant that didn't bother listing prices on its menu. Veronica had pulled up the architectural blueprints of the building on a massive screen, mapping out my husband's journey to humiliation like a general planning a military campaign. "The beauty is in the details," she'd said, zooming in on the first floor lobby. "See this spot right here? It's a dead zone, no cell signal. The steel in the building structure creates a perfect Faraday cage. He'll sit there, unable to even distract himself with his phone." I had watched her work, mesmerized, like an apprentice learning from a master. She had called her head of security, a former Special Forces operator named Daniel, and given him his instructions. "Be professional but inflexible," she told him. "If he tries to leave, be encouraging but firm." Ms. Sterling specifically requested his patience. The plan had layers I could never have conceived of on my own. She had scheduled 2 legitimate interviews just before and after his allotted time slot. Bright, talented young people who would arrive on time, be seen immediately and walk past him with their dignity and ambition intact, while his slowly eroded the conference room temperature. She had pulled up the building's climate controls on her tablet. "I'll set it to 78 degrees. Not hot enough to be an official complaint, but warm enough to make him sweat through that expensive suit he'll undoubtedly wear." But the true masterstroke was the paperwork, 40 pages of forms covering company values, diversity and inclusion statements, and workplace respect policies. It included mandatory essay questions about supporting female leadership and creating an inclusive environment for all employees. Every single question was a landmine, designed to make him confront his own hypocrisy while he sat there, waiting. "He'll either lie on the forms or tell the truth," Veronica had explained with a thin smile. "Either way, he loses. If he lies, he's confronting his own reality. If he tells the truth, he's unemployable." I had added my own contributions, the small, intimate details only a wife would know. He gets anxious when his phone battery is low. He claims it's about being reachable for work, but it's really about control, about knowing exactly how much power he has left. "Perfect," Veronica had said, making a note. "We'll have plenty of visible outlets. None of them will work. We'll put little out-of-order signs on them." Now, standing in her office at 9:45 on Thursday morning, I could hear her assistant's voice through the intercom. "Yes, Mr. Anderson is here for his 10 o'clock. Yes, I'll let Ms. Sterling know he's arrived." Veronica entered, closing the door soundlessly behind her. "He's wearing the Armani and his lucky interview suit," as he'd called it in a LinkedIn post from the previous year. She had researched him as thoroughly as I had researched her. His college transcripts, his full employment history, his social media presence going back more than a decade. She'd unearthed things even I hadn't known. A formal complaint filed by a female colleague at his very first job quietly settled out of court. A note from a professor in his MBA program about his difficulty accepting constructive feedback from female instructors. "The pattern goes back 20 years, she had told me on Wednesday night. "Men like your husband don't just become this way. They're cultivated, encouraged, and enabled." We took our positions. I sat in the chair facing the door, angled just so the morning sun would backlight me like a figure in a dramatic film. Veronica sat at her massive desk, papers spread out before her like evidence in a trial. "Remember," she said, gently adjusting the collar of my suit, "you don't have to justify a thing you don't explain. You don't defend. You just let him see you, seeing him for exactly what he is." Through the security monitor on Veronica's desk, we watched him in the lobby. He was scrolling through his phone, no doubt reviewing his carefully crafted talking points. At exactly 10 a.m., he approached the reception desk. "Robert Anderson, I have a 10 o'clock with Ms. Sterling," he announced with the unearned confidence of a man who had never been made to wait a day in his life. The receptionist, who had been briefed to perfection, offered a sympathetic, apologetic smile. "Of course, Mr. Anderson. There seems to be a small mix-up with the scheduling system. If you could just have a seat for a moment while I sort this out." A moment stretched into 15 minutes. He stood at first, then sat, then stood again. The lobby was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive design. The chairs were modern art, beautiful to look at but impossible to sit in comfortably, positioned just out of reach of any power outlets, and facing a wall of abstract art that seemed to subtly shift if you stared at it for too long. At 10:20, he was moved to the conference room. Daniel, the head of security, personally escorted him, his military bearing and professional politeness a stark contrast to the discomfort he was inflicting. "Ms. Sterling sends her profound apologies for the delay. She's very much looking forward to meeting you. If you could just complete these preliminary forms while you wait." The forms were my favorite part. Veronica had crafted them like an instrument of psychological warfare. Question 15. Describe a time when you successfully collaborated with and took direction from a female superior. Question 23. How would you handle a situation where a subordinate employee consistently showed disrespect to administrative or support staff? Question 31. What value do you place on work-life balance for all members of your team? On the monitor, we watched him struggle. His confident posture slowly deflated. He loosened his tie at 10:45. By 11, he was dabbing sweat from his brow with his pocket square, the very one I had ironed for him just yesterday morning, out of a habit I was now breaking. "Should we check his phone activity?" I asked. Veronica pulled up a program on her computer. "My IT department has access to our guest Wi-Fi usage. He's attempted to call someone named Kevin 6 times. He's texted someone named Wife once." The message read, "Interview running long home later. Wife, not even my name in his own phone." At 11:30, another move. This time to the 3rd floor waiting area, the one adjacent to an office renovation. The noise from the construction wasn't quite loud enough to be a formal complaint, but it was impossible to ignore a drill would start up every few minutes, just as he seemed to be settling down. "My battery is dying," he told the assistant around noon. "Is there any chance I could get a charger?" "I'm so sorry. All of our company chargers are currently in use, but Mrs. Sterling should be ready for you very soon." He slumped back into his chair, defeated by relentless corporate politeness. By 12:30, his degradation was nearly complete. The Armani suit was wrinkled, his hair was a mess from running his hands through it over and over, and his confidence had evaporated like morning mist. He'd filled out the forms 3 different times, each version messier and more desperate than the last. "Look at his posture," Veronica observed with clinical detachment. Classic signs of learned helplessness. He's stopped checking the time, stopped asking for updates. He's just waiting. Just like I had waited, countless times in countless places, for 12 long years. At 1 o'clock, they moved him to his final holding position, the small windowless room directly outside Veronica's office. Through the closed door, he could hear us talking, laughing occasionally, the unmistakable sounds of a successful and engaging meeting. He knocked once, a tentative rap of his knuckles. "Just a few more minutes, Mr. Anderson," the assistant chirped through the door. "She knows you're here." I thought about all the times I had been told, "just a few more minutes," at the doctor's office when he'd promised to be there for the ultrasound for the baby we lost, at my father's funeral when he was closing a deal on the phone. At the restaurant for my birthday when he was busy proving a point to Leo about priorities. He knocked again, Veronica noted, checking her watch. 2:13, he's getting desperate. Good, I said, surprised by the coldness in my own voice. We reviewed the final choreography one last time. I would be seated when he entered, calm and composed. Veronica would allow him a moment to process my presence before she spoke. We would not explain anything right away. Let him figure it out. Let him connect the dots. Let him understand that this entire drawn-out humiliation had been orchestrated by the woman he'd treated like a trained pet. 2:40, Veronica announced. 3 hours and 22 minutes, exactly. Plus the 20 minutes you waited before he was supposed to arrive. She pressed the intercom button on her desk. Send him in. We heard him scramble to his feet, no doubt attempting to straighten his ruined suit, trying to salvage one last shred of his dignity. The door handle turned slowly, as if he were afraid of what he might find on the other side. When he finally stepped into the room and saw me, his face became a symphony of emotions. Confusion, recognition, fear, anger, and finally a dawning, horrified understanding. He just stood there in the doorway, his mouth hanging slightly open, all of his prepared interview speeches evaporating like smoke. I leaned forward just slightly, meeting his gaze with the same calm I had shown him in the diner. But this time, I was the one holding all the cards. This time, he was the one waiting for permission to understand what was happening to him. Sit, Veronica said, her voice carrying the quiet authority of a person who had never been made to wait for anything in her life. We need to discuss your leadership philosophy. He collapsed into the chair across from me, as if his bones had suddenly turned to water. The sharp Armani suit that had looked so impressive this morning now clung to him, damp with sweat and defeat. His mouth opened and closed a few times, but no sound came out, like a fish gasping on the deck of a boat. Mr. Anderson, Veronica said, her voice now as cold and professional as a surgeon's scalpel. Let's discuss your application, specifically your leadership philosophy. She picked up a folder from her desk. It was his portfolio, the one he had spent weeks perfecting, but clipped right to the front were the screenshots I had provided. The marital performance index, the group chat messages, the comments from the live stream. I don't... He started, then trailed off, his eyes glued to the papers. According to your cover letter, Veronica continued, reading his own words back to him, you pride yourself on managing challenging personalities and establishing clear hierarchies within team dynamics. Could you please elaborate on that for us? His Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. That's not... I meant that in a professional context. Oh? Veronica slid another paper from the folder. Because according to this message dated 6 months ago, you wrote, and I quote, the same techniques that work at home work in the office establish dominance early, maintain control consistently. That sounds like a fairly unified philosophy to me. I watched him shrink with every word she spoke. This was not the man who had swaggered into the diner last Thursday night, a conquering hero returning from battle. This was a man discovering for the first time in his life that actions have consequences, that games have endings, that even the most well-trained pet can learn new tricks. She set this up, he said suddenly, pointing a trembling finger at me, his voice cracking. This is entrapment. You can't do this. Can't what? I interrupted, my own voice perfectly steady. Can't make you wait? Can't document your behavior? Can't use your own words against you? Veronica swiveled her monitor to face him. The video from the diner was playing on the screen, his own voice booming from the speakers. 3 hours and 22 minutes. I told you she'd still be waiting. 47 people watched this live, she said clinically. It had over 1,300 views by the next morning. You turned your wife's humiliation into public entertainment. Today, we simply returned the favor. That was different. How? I leaned forward. Because you were the one holding the phone? Because your friends were laughing with you instead of at you? Because you had trained me so well you knew without a doubt that I would just sit there and take it. His hands were shaking now, the same hands that had patted my head like I was a dog, the same hands that had snapped at me for a beer, the same hands that had held up a phone to film my humiliation and high-fived his friends after a successful training session. "The forms you filled out," Veronica said, pulling them from another folder. "They make for interesting reading. Question 15, about collaborating with female superiors. You wrote, 'I have never had that situation arise.' Question 23, about handling disrespectful employees. Establish clear consequences and maintain consistency. Question 31, about work-life balance. Employees should be available when needed." She set the forms down on the desk with a quiet finality. "Not exactly the answers we look for here at Sterling Industries." "You made me wait 3 hours," he said, as if the full extent of the parallel was just now dawning on him. "You planned all of this." "Actually," I said, "you planned it. 2 years of networking to get this interview, months of preparation, that brand new suit which doesn't look so new anymore. You even practiced your handshake. It's too firm, by the way. You're always trying to establish dominance, even with me." "Especially with her," Veronica corrected. "According to these messages, your wife was your practice field, a testing ground for your management techniques." He looked at me then, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time in years, not as his trained pet, not as his personal assistant, but as a person who had just orchestrated his complete and utter professional humiliation. "How?" he whispered. "The same way you did it," I said. "Systematically, deliberately, and with an audience to witness every single moment." Veronica pressed a button on her desk. "Daniel, could you come in, please?" The head of security entered, his formidable presence filling the doorway. My husband instinctively recoiled. "Mr. Anderson was just leaving," Veronica said pleasantly. "Please ensure he exits through the main lobby, the one with all the glass walls, where everyone can see him." "This is illegal," he sputtered, stumbling to his feet. "I'll sue. You'll what?" Veronica also stood, all 5'4" of her radiating more power than he had ever possessed. "Tell people you were made to wait for a job interview? That you were treated with the exact same measure of respect you've shown your wife for 12 years? Please do. I would love to see that lawsuit." Daniel stepped aside to let him pass, but my husband hesitated at the door. "Why?" he asked me, his voice pleading. "I gave you everything. A home, security, a life most women would kill for." "You gave me a cage," I said simply, "and then you were surprised when the person you caged learned how to pick the lock." He looked between the two of us, 2 women who had taken the power he held so dear and turned it against him. "You've destroyed my career." "No," Veronica said, sitting back down. "You did that yourself. We just held up a mirror. Consider this your exit interview from your marriage." "She'll come back," he said, but it sounded more like a question than a statement. "She always comes back." "Actually," I said, pulling out my phone and showing him a text from my divorce attorney, "I have a meeting at 4 o'clock. We're going to be discussing your hidden cryptocurrency accounts." "Oh, you didn't know I knew about those?" Kevin's ex-wife was very helpful. It turns out she kept meticulous records of everything during their divorce proceedings. His face went bone white. "That's private financial—" "So was my dignity," I cut in, "but you made that public entertainment." Daniel cleared his throat. "Sir, we really need to leave now." As my husband was escorted toward the door, defeated and broken, Veronica called out one last time. "Oh, and Mr. Anderson, one more thing. I've already forwarded a summary of your interview experience to my network. All of them. Every female CEO, every female hiring manager, every female HR director in the industry. They all found it very educational." He turned back, his face a mask of pure rage and despair. "You've ruined me." "No," I said, standing up and smoothing the front of my mother's suit. "You ruined yourself. We just made you look at it." Daniel led him out, and through Veronica's massive office window, we watched him cross the lobby every person he passed seemed to know. The security guards, the receptionists, the other job candidates. They all watched him with the same expression, a mixture of pity and disgust. "How do you feel?" Veronica asked me once he was gone. I thought about it. For 12 years, I had been slowly disappearing, one correction at a time. Today, I had made him disappear instead. His confidence, his control, his carefully constructed illusion of superiority. All of it. Gone in 3 hours and 22 minutes. Free, I said finally. I feel free. Veronica smiled, the first genuinely warm expression I had seen from her. Good. Now let's discuss your future. I meant what I said about that job offer. Any woman who can orchestrate this level of strategic revenge belongs in corporate leadership. Through the window, I could see my husband's BMW pulling out of the parking garage. He would go home to an empty house. I'd already moved my things into a hotel. He would call Kevin, Leo, and Mark, but they were all dealing with their own mushrooming crises now that Helen and the other wives had started comparing notes. Tomorrow, the locks on the house would be changed, the divorce papers would be served, the full financial audit would begin. But today, in this moment, I was sitting in a CEO's office as an equal, not a pet. The interview was over. His, and in a way, mine as well. We had both learned what we were capable of. The difference was, I would never forget the lesson Veronica's office phone rang just as I was signing my employment paperwork. She glanced at the caller ID and smiled, putting it on speaker. Sterling Industries, Veronica speaking. "This is David Richardson from Richardson Tech." The voice was clipped, professional. "I'm calling for a reference check on a Robert Anderson. He listed your company as his most recent interview." Veronica's eyes met mine across the desk. "Ah, yes, Mr. Anderson. He interviewed with us just yesterday. Could you tell me about his performance?" Certainly, he demonstrated remarkable patience. Waited 3 hours and 22 minutes without a single complaint. She paused, letting the silence hang. Though he did seem to struggle with our company culture assessment, particularly the sections on workplace dignity and respect for all employees, the silence on the other end of the line stretched on uncomfortably. "I see. Thank you for your time." After she hung up, Veronica turned to me. "That's the 4th call today. Word travels fast in our world." My phone buzzed. It was a text from Helen. "Emergency. Check the group chat." Mark had discovered Helen's documentation and was frantically trying to delete years of incriminating messages. But she had already forwarded everything to his company's board of directors, who were particularly interested in the messages where he'd bragged about using company resources to track his wife's car. "I have to take this," I told Veronica. Helen answered on the first ring, her voice a whisper. "He's been home for 3 hours just pacing and screaming on the phone with Leo and Kevin. He keeps saying your name, blaming you for starting all of this." "Where are you?" "Locked in the basement bathroom. I have my go bag just like you suggested. The lawyer you recommended has everything." Through the phone, I could hear Mark's muffled voice shouting. She was supposed to be the broken one, the obedient one. How did she plan this? "Helen, listen to me carefully," I said. "Call 911 if you feel unsafe. Otherwise, just stick to the plan. The locksmith is scheduled for tomorrow at noon, right?" "Yes, and the mover's at 2. My phone beeped with another incoming call. It was my husband's mother. "I have to go," I told Helen. "Just remember, you are not alone anymore." I declined his mother's call, but she immediately sent a text. "We need to talk about what you did. This is not how a family handles its problems. Family." She had watched her son systematically humiliate me for years and never said a word. But now that her own marriage was imploding, his father had apparently moved into a hotel after the spreadsheet came to light. Suddenly, she was concerned about family. Veronica was reading something on her computer and started to laugh. "Your husband just applied for unemployment benefits. He's listed his reason for leaving his last job as hostile work environment. He wasn't fired. He will be by Monday," she said. "My friend on his company's board just texted me. The investigation into the Marital Performance Index revealed he was using company time and computers to maintain it. That's misuse of company resources and creating a hostile work environment for any female employees who might have seen it. My new apartment key felt heavy and significant in my pocket as I left Sterling Industries that evening. The doorman at my new building, a secure high-rise Veronica had recommended, nodded as I passed. "Evening, Miss Collins." Collins, my maiden name. I'd started using it immediately, even before the divorce was final. Inside my new apartment, boxes were still stacked against the walls, but my mother's china was already arranged in the glass front cabinet, her old photos displayed on the mantel, things I'd kept in storage for years because he'd called them old-fashioned and cluttered. My phone rang. It was an unknown number. Is this the wife from the diner video? My blood ran cold for a second. Who is this? My name's Patricia. I don't know you, but my daughter sent me the video. I wanted to thank you. Thank me? I waited 8 hours once. It was Christmas Eve, 1987. My husband was at a bar with his friends, making bets on whether I'd still be at his mother's house. When he finally decided to show up, I waited. I always waited. I stayed married for 30 more years before he passed away. Her voice cracked. I never stood up. I never walked out. I taught my daughters that waiting was a form of love. She sent me your video and said, "Mom, this is what you should have done." You showed her something I never could, that we don't have to wait. After we hung up, I sat in my empty apartment and let that sink in. The video now had over 50,000 views. The comment section was a flood of women sharing their own stories of waiting, of being trained, of the moment they finally said, "No more." Kevin's ex-wife had started a private online support group called No More Waiting. It had 1,000 members in 2 days. My husband texted me at midnight, "The house is too quiet." Then a minute later, "I found your note." I'd left it on the kitchen counter, propped against his coffee maker, timed for when I knew he'd see it. Just 3 words. Wait for nothing. He called 17 times between midnight and 3 a.m. I turned off my phone and slept more soundly than I had in years. Saturday morning brought an unexpected visitor. Leo's ex-wife, Sandra, was at my door with coffee and a box of donuts. "Thought you could use some solidarity sugar," she said with a wry smile. We sat on the floor amidst my moving boxes as she told me about the aftermath of her own divorce. "The loneliness hits different when you're the one who chooses it," she said. "It's not really lonely at all. It's peaceful." She showed me the new dating profile Leo had created. His bio read, "Traditional man seeking a feminine woman who understands and appreciates proper roles." He has 12 matches. She laughed. They're all bots or women looking for a sugar daddy. Turns out the dating pool for controlling narcissists is pretty shallow. My lawyer called while Sandra was still there. He's claiming abandonment, says you left without any warning. I waited 3 hours in a diner on our anniversary while he made bets on my loyalty. How much more warning did he need? That's what I told his lawyer. Also, Helen's husband tried to hide assets, transferred a huge sum to an offshore account. He didn't realize Helen had installed keystroke logging software on their home computer 6 months ago. She has every password. The dominoes continued to fall by Saturday afternoon. Mark had been fired and locked out of his company email. Kevin's custody battle with his ex-wife exploded when their 17-year-old daughter, who was far more tech-savvy than he was, found the entire group chat history backed up on their family's cloud storage. She sent it directly to the judge with a simple note, "This is why I don't want to visit him." That night, my husband tried to control the narrative by posting on Facebook, "Going through a difficult time. Some people believe everything they see online. Trust that there are always 2 sides to every story." The comments were brutal. Maria, the waitress from the diner, had found the post. "I watched you humiliate that poor woman for 3 hours straight. There's no other side to that kind of cruelty." Even his own brother commented, "Maybe it's time for some self-reflection, Rob." By Sunday morning, he had deleted all of his social media accounts. But the internet never forgets. The screenshots lived on in Reddit threads, Twitter discussions, and TikTok videos, analyzing toxic relationships. Someone had turned his spreadsheet into a teachable moment, breaking down the manipulation tactics for a new generation. I started my new job at Sterling Industries on Monday. My desk faced a wall of windows overlooking the city, the space flooded with natural light. On my wall, I hung a single framed photo. It was a picture Nancy had taken of me at the diner just before I left. I'm standing, my dignity intact, walking away. Veronica stopped by my office with a welcome gift. It was a coffee mug that read, "Never wait." "Ready for your first leadership meeting?" she asked. I thought about the 12 years I had spent dimming my own light, making myself smaller, waiting for permission to exist fully. Now I was about to walk into a room where my voice would matter, where my ideas would be heard, where no one would ever snap their fingers at me for a drink. "I've been ready my whole life," I said. I was just waiting for the right moment to stop waiting. The leadership meeting had just ended when Veronica's assistant knocked on the door of the conference room. "There's a woman here to see you. She says her name is Rachel Chun from Cipher Financial Forensics." Rachel entered the room like a storm in stiletto heels, carrying a leather portfolio that probably cost more than my old monthly allowance. She was part of Veronica's network, the expert who had found my husband's hidden cryptocurrency. "We need to talk," she said, pulling out a tablet. I found something much bigger. The three of us gathered around Veronica's massive conference table as Rachel pulled up spreadsheets that made my head spin. Your husband and his friends weren't just hiding a little crypto on the side. They had a whole investment scheme going. They called it the Freedom Fund. It was their retirement plan for when they eventually divorced their wives. My stomach lurched. When, not if. "Look at this," she said, showing me a transaction history dating back 5 years' monthly deposits from all 4 men into a single account. The account is in the name of Kevin's ex-brother-in-law, domiciled in the Cayman Islands' current value, $847,000. Veronica let out a low whistle. That's wire fraud and conspiracy. "It gets better," Rachel continued. "They were using their wives' excellent credit to secure loans for the investments. Helen's credit was used to purchase 2 rental properties that Mark was claiming on his taxes. Your credit was used for a high-risk startup investment that he listed as a business expense on your joint return. I thought about all the times he'd told me I was too emotional to understand finances, too scattered to be trusted with money. All the while, he'd been using my name, my credit, and my future as collateral for his grand escape plan. Can we prove it?" I asked, my voice tight. Rachel smiled the smile of a great white shark. "Already have." Kevin's ex-brother-in-law flipped the second the FBI knocked on his door. Turns out he's not willing to go to federal prison for a group of guys who referred to him as barely family in their group chats. That evening, Veronica's network convened at a penthouse apartment overlooking the city. There were 12 women around a dining table that had likely seen more strategic planning than most corporate boardrooms. There was Margaret, who had taken control of her ex-husband's Fortune 500 company in their divorce, Linda, whose revenge had been so surgically precise that her ex now lived in his mother's basement at the age of 53. And Susan, a renowned psychiatrist who had literally written the book on narcissistic personality disorder. "Show them what you found," Veronica urged Rachel. As Rachel laid out the details of the Freedom Fund, the energy in the room shifted from supportive to predatory. These women had all been victims once. Now they were something else entirely. "We can destroy them legally," Margaret said, already texting her contact at the Justice Department. "Or," Linda suggested with a glint in her eye, "we can do what they fear most. We can make them irrelevant." Susan pulled out her phone. "I'm the keynote speaker at the American Psychiatric Association conference next month. My topic just changed to the ball and chain syndrome, a case study in collective narcissistic abuse. The host, Diana, was already typing on her laptop. "I'll get the senior investigative journalist from the Times interested. She owes me a favor. I watch these women mobilize, a network of power and influence I never knew existed." My revenge had been personal. This was systematic. 3 days later, my husband called me from a number I didn't recognize. "They froze everything," he said without any preamble. "My accounts, the investments, all of it." "What did you do?" "I didn't do anything," I said calmly. "Your Freedom Fund did." There was a long silence on the line. Then, "How did you—" "Kevin's ex-brother-in-law. It's funny how quickly people abandon you when federal charges are on the table. This is insane. It was just a savings plan. In other people's names, using fraudulent loans. To plan your escapes from marriages you referred to as temporary situations in your private messages." He was breathing heavily now, a panicked, ragged sound. "I need that money for lawyers." "You should have thought of that before you needed lawyers." "Please," the word came out strangled, broken. "I'm staying at a motel. My credit cards are maxed out. My family won't talk to me. Even Leo won't answer my calls." Leo had his own problems. Sandra had just posted his cringe-worthy dating profile on Twitter, complete with screenshots of the harassing messages he'd sent to women who had rejected him. The hashtag #LeoTheCreep was trending in their city. "Remember what you told Mark about me?" I said. "That I was so well trained I'd wait forever? Well, wait for this. I am never helping you again." I hung up and blocked the number. At Sterling Industries, my workplace dignity initiative was gaining national attention. Companies were calling, wanting to implement our new protocols. The irony was not lost on me. I had learned how to recognize and dismantle abuse by documenting my own. During a presentation to the board of a Fortune 500 company, I used sanitized examples from the ball and chain gang. This spreadsheet, I showed them, tracked human beings like they were inventory, performance metrics for wives. This is what happens when a toxic workplace culture goes home with your employees. A man in the back raised his hand. "Isn't this a bit extreme? These are private relationships." "Sir," I replied, "these men plan their strategies at work during work hours using company resources. 3 of them have been fired for it. The 4th is under federal investigation. There is nothing private about systematic abuse." The room went quiet later. That same man's executive assistant quietly thanked me. "He does the same thing to his wife," she whispered. "Maybe now he'll think twice." Helen called me that night, laughing for the first time in months. "Mark is living with his mother. She makes him do chores and tracks them on a chart like a child he has a 9 p.m. curfew." She paused. "The best part? His mother sent me a thank you card. She said I helped her see the monster she had created, and now she's trying to fix it." Kevin's situation had imploded spectacularly. His 17-year-old daughter had started a TikTok series called My Dad's Toxic Playbook, where she calmly read excerpts from the group chat with her own insightful commentary. She had over 2 million followers. College recruiters were reaching out to her, impressed by her advocacy work. "At least something good came from all their ugliness," Helen said. The article by Diana's journalist friend was published that week. The headline read, "The Ball and Chain Gang, How 4 Men Turned Marriage into a Competition and Lost Everything." It included anonymous interviews with all the wives, our stories woven together into a powerful cautionary tale. The article went viral globally. Women from Japan to Jamaica were sharing their own versions of the Ball and Chain Gang. My husband texted me from yet another new number. "The article is killing me. I can't get hired anywhere. Please make it stop." I didn't respond, but Veronica did, publicly, on LinkedIn. Character matters in leadership. Men who systematically dehumanize their partners will do the same to their employees. Sterling Industries stands against all forms of abuse, both public and private. Her post received over 50,000 likes. Rachel called with a final update. The FBI is pressing charges: wire fraud, conspiracy, tax evasion. Your husband is looking at 5 to 10 years. 5 to 10 years. He had controlled me for 12. That night, I met a woman named Diana at a coffee shop, another member of the network whose own story had gone viral a year earlier. Her husband had done something similar, though less organized. She had dismantled his life so thoroughly, he'd ended up moving to another country. How do you move on? I asked her. After the revenge, after the justice, how do you just live? She stirred her coffee thoughtfully. You realize the revenge was never the point. The point was reclamation. You weren't destroying him. You were rebuilding yourself. Every action you took against him was really an action for you. I thought about that as I walked home to my apartment. The city lights blurred through the window, just like they had that night in the diner. But this time, they were blurred by tears of relief, not rage. My phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize, a woman from Ohio. I saw your story. I've been waiting 6 hours for my husband. He's at a bar with his friends, betting on how long I'll stay, but I just left thank you for showing me I could. Another text from Australia. My husband has a spreadsheet too. Had. I just sent it to his boss. Another from Texas. The wives are talking. We're all talking now. The game is over. I stood outside my apartment building looking up at my lit window. Inside was my space, my peace, my freedom. No one was timing me or scoring me or training me. The deeper revenge wasn't what we had done to them. It was what we had done for each other. We had connected, we had documented, we had supported, and we had freed one another. The Ball and Chain Gang had engineered their own destruction by bringing us all together. My husband would never understand that. He would spend the next 5 to 10 years thinking this was about him, about punishment, about what I did to him. But it had stopped being about him the moment I walked out of that diner. It was about me. Finally. Beautifully. Completely about me. If this story of poetic justice had you cheering for her transformation, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when she sat in Veronica's office, watching him wait for 3 hours and 22 minutes, finally tasting his own medicine. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below, and don't miss out on more empowering stories just like this one. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. End of story.